He is the author of Opening Minds, A Journey of Extraordinary Encounters. Crop Circles. Opening Minds is one of the first books to argue that man-made crop circles can create the same anomalous energy effects as naturally formed circles. Wow, there is something to contemplate. Opening Minds will also document how crop circles are related to remote viewing and other subtle energy phenomena. Having witnessed the formation of large crop circles made by expert crop circle making teams in England, Dr. Hine learned of the extraordinary phenomena, including telepathic experiences, balls of light, UFO sightings that frequently surround man-made crop circles. He's made experimental circles here and in the UK so as to test whether the circle's anomalous effects can be replicated in those formations made by ordinary people. Dr. Hine now believes that all crop circles, regardless of their origin, create magical effects, his word, magical effects, by virtue of their shape and the subtle interaction between humans, plants, and sacred geometry. In addition to assisting with Institute for Resonance crop circle tours, he continues to teach remote viewing in Boulder and in Japan. His website is www.openingminds.info. In a moment, Dr. Hine. Dr. Hine, welcome to the program.
Well, good morning, Art, and thanks for having me here. And I know I speak for a lot of listeners and saying thanks for having such a great show for so many years.
Thank you. We have some hum on the telephone.
We do. How's that?
Worse.
Worse. Okay.
Are you on some sort of headset, Doctor?
Yes, hold on one second.
Okay, let's switch to a real phone.
How's that?
About 1 million times better.
We got it.
Okay, all right. So it's hard to know where to begin with you, Doctor. It really is hard. I mean, there's so much here. So I guess I better just ask you, give me your best explanation of what you're calling subtle energy is, please.
Subtle energy phenomena are a whole range of phenomena that relate to biological organisms and life energies that really were never really addressed by the mechanistic physics that we're taught about in school.
Talking about things like auras?
Yes. Auras, the type of energies that bodies and living things generate, healing energies, chi energy, from martial arts, things like that.
Yes.
These energies are very subtle. Some people estimate that they're 10 times weaker than the Earth's magnetic field. So, we've been talking about solar flares. Think how they're very subtle and very weak. In fact, sometimes they're referred to as ultra-weak forces or non-Maxwellian forces. They're very weak, but if you set up the proper equipment, like with random number generators and things like that,
yes,
you can actually measure these forces. In fact, you were getting into this discussion last night with Dr. Franks.
In fact, I was, and we're going to go right back into it. But first, let me approach it from the skeptic's point of view. Many say, Doctor, they're so damn subtle that they're baloney. They don't exist. They're not real.
Yeah, I might have taken that view myself, before I started studying it, because like you, I read New Scientist magazine, and I kind of have a hard-headed approach to this. But if you look at the statistical data, there's no doubt that these phenomena are real.
All right, make me a believer. What evidence would you offer that these things are real? Your best evidence.
Well, let's just take, in general, to start out with, all of the psychic research that's been done over the last 100 years.
Okay.
When you put all these studies together, there's a type of research that combines statistical studies together, and you can kind of look at the effects over many different studies and get a large sample size. And sometimes the odds that you're getting these results are like in the trillions to one. And that really, by any standard, that's like the gold standard in science. If you get odds that are that high, that's called statistical significance.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just look at the experiments that were done in Princeton at the Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research Lab. I'm sure you're familiar with this.
I certainly am.
Yeah. Well, with the random number generator, they've found that certain global events affect their random number generator. And in the experiments they did, where people would sit at home in front of their PCs and try to affect a random number generator.
Yes.
After the cumulative results, after about 8 years or so,
yes,
if you look at the graph, there are results. There is no doubt. Now, this may challenge our idea about reality, that you can affect a device sitting 1,000 miles away.
I know.
But this is the nature of science. Science doesn't mean that it necessarily has to fit into, with your belief system that you learned in school. It just means you have to look at the data and have an open mind and say, look, what does this mean? I think if you look at the data from this research, when they did the research for the remote viewing program, when Jessica Utts did the study for the CIA,
yes.
asked, did they get good results? She concluded they did. So, we know it's real. We just don't understand exactly how it works.
All right, Simeon, when I spoke to the people who were actually running the program at Princeton, and be assured I did at a very high level, what I detected from them, and maybe you can help me explain this, is a great disinterest in having any publicity about the findings at Princeton. They just didn't want to really talk about this publicly at all.
Yeah.
Why do you think that would be?
I'm not surprised.
Why? Such astounding results surely should be shouted about.
I agree with you completely, and this is why I do this type of research with my colleagues at the Institute for Resonance, because I came out of a traditional academic background, and you cannot study this type of material in a traditional academic background because you'll be ostracized or marginalized. And, Ingo Swann has gone into this in great detail. I know you've talked to Ingo on this show in the past.
You bet.
In his books, he says that there's this fundamental bias in our society against this sort of phenomena because it goes against the very fundamental things we were taught that define reality.
Yes,
and that's scary for people. And if you're an academic in a university, it's going to threaten your job and your career, and people, are concerned about this. So,
But Doctor, it is measurable, real proof that the energy we're talking about exists. So
yes.
I can understand treading carefully into this field from a career point of view. But once you actually have results you can slam down on somebody's desk and say, here it is, then why would you want to be quiet about it?
I wouldn't want to be quiet about it. In fact, I'm very loud about it, like you and many other people on the show. It's just the reality of the situation is, if you look at the history of science, and anyone who's taken a history of science class will know that science is not always rational. And even with good data, people will turn their minds and not look at the results. Now look at what Scientific American said about manned flight with the Wright brothers back, 80 years ago or so.
Yes.
They said it's impossible. Why? Because things that are heavier than air can't fly. And, we should all keep this in mind when we ride on airplanes nowadays. The fundamental tenets of science, have to be challenged from time to time. And, Thomas Kuhn and others have suggested that we get these paradigm shifts not by people changing their mind, but kind of, by the old cadre just kind of fading
dying
away.
off.
And I'm afraid that's what's going to have to happen here because it's not only belief systems, Art. It's the whole institutions that are built around these older mindsets. And, I'm not against people making a living and feeling secure. We all want that. But it's coming at the cost of our own health in lots of different ways because we have this new type of science available to us, and yet there's so much resistance to it,
Well, what if this whole mass consciousness thing really is a gigantic power? Let's think about that for a second. Just suppose for a second that it was all really true, and all of this mass consciousness business, if properly directed, would be a power unlike we've ever experienced on Earth. Let's see. Would you want to keep that quiet?
I think it depends if you're part of the power elite.
You might.
You might want to keep that quiet.
Definitely might.
It depends who you are. It depends where you are in the system. Speaking as a sociologist, it depends where you are in the social system. If you're at the top and you want to keep things the same, you're not going to want people talking about this.
Yeah, you don't want to rock that boat.
No, you don't want to rock that boat. But if you're one of the people that can see a better way and you think, we could actually have a better planet here. We don't need all of the particular problems that we have. As some of the guests have pointed out in the past, we don't need these combustion engines anymore if we have zero-point energy machines. But, the real crux